In the Antarctic Ocean, 28 people were on a ship, but their ship got stuck in the middle of millions of tons of snow. They had been stranded in one place for 7 months. One night, they heard a loud noise from beneath the ship, and suddenly the ship tilted to one side. It seemed as if someone had tried to push the ship from below after that. What happened was beyond their imagination. Welcome once again to Mission with AJ Videos. Viewers, the Antarctic Ocean, where the waves rise as high as buildings, the wind blows at 100 kilometers per hour, and the water is so cold that the blood in the human body begins to freeze. Traveling in this ocean is like embracing death, even if someone survived the cold, and the waves, the massive icebergs like mountains, could easily crush the ship. But 111 years ago, when neither technology nor ships were so advanced, a group of 28 people got trapped in this terrifying ocean under the open sky. They spent not just a few weeks or months, but astonishingly 2 whole years. There was no shortage of snow or stormy winds, but there was a complete lack of food and fresh water. This is a survival story that the world has called the greatest survival story of all time. The hero of this story is Sir Ernest Shackleton, an explorer whose mission was to test the endurance of the human body, and that's why he named his ship Endurance. He had completed many terrifying expeditions in his life. In 1901, he was part of a mission to reach Antarctica, but he had to return when he was still 750 kilometers away in 1907. He attempted the mission again, but had to turn back just 150 kilometers before reaching his goal. And this time in 1914, his plan was not only to reach Antarctica, he intended to cross the entire continent on foot. The reason was simple. Sir Ernest Shackleton wanted to achieve what no one had ever done before this mission was named the Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition. Because of how dangerous this mission was, no one was willing to join it. The first challenge for Sir Ernest was to find a crew for his expedition to do this. He wrote an advertisement and published it in the Times newspaper. Remember, this was not an advertisement for an ordinary tour. Its opening words were, "Men wanted for hazardous journey." It clearly stated you will receive very little pay, face deadly cold, spend months in darkness, live in constant danger, and there is no guarantee of a safe return. Sir Ernest wanted to attract people who were not afraid of dangers. Soon he hired a crew of 27 people. Sir Ernest had been planning this mission for 4 years. But as the time approached, his dream of expedition began to fade. Because World War I had begun in the world, everyone thought that now the expedition would be cancelled. But Britain, which had declared war itself, gave permission to the Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition. A very strong ship was needed for this mission, which could break through the ice-covered Antarctic Ocean and move forward. But it was not an ordinary ship that could be made easily. Fortunately, such a ship was already available to sail in the Arctic. A Norwegian company had made this ship for another explorer who wanted to take the elite class of that time to hunt polar bears through this ship. But his business model failed. Sir Ernest bought this ship and named it Endurance. Endurance was specially made of thick American oak wood, and the design was such that the wood could withstand the intense pressure of the ice. It was a kind of hybrid ship which had sails and an engine. Now, finally the day had come that Sir Ernest had been waiting for many years. On August 8th, 1914, Endurance began its journey from Plymouth, England. For the next 4 months it traveled in the Atlantic Ocean. First, it went to Argentina, then to South Georgia Island, and after completing its final preparations there, on December 5th, 1914, it headed for the Weddell Sea in the Antarctic Ocean. There were 28 people in Endurance, including 50 large-class dogs, who had to be brought to Antarctica to pull sleds and equipment. This journey lasted for 46 days, and now they were about to reach the coast of Antarctica in just 1 day. But then, on January 18th, 1915, the first trouble blocked their way. It so happened that the layers of ice on the Weddell Sea became thicker and thicker, and at one point, these layers became 18 feet thick. and now Endurance did not have enough strength to tear them apart and move on. This ice was so weak that it was not even possible to start walking from here. Endurance was stuck in the ice, about 130 kilometers before its destination. Vassal Bay. At first, it seemed that this problem had come temporarily, but in fact, it proved to be the biggest problem on the way to the Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition. After trying for several days, they decided to manually move the 300-ton ship forward. For the next 2 days, the crew was exhausted while cutting through the ice and making way. But this task was more difficult than they had thought. After many days of hard work, they were able to move the ship forward by just 300 meters. But then Endurance got stuck again. After trying to free the ship for a month, finally, on February 14th, 1915, Sir Ernest lost hope. He decided to leave the ship to the natural movement of the ice. It was possible that the ice would break itself as soon as winter fell. Meanwhile, Endurance was now working as a winter station. The crew started working on their routine, but the only difference was that the ship was now standing still. The crew was very passionate, and Sir Ernest had established a strong discipline on the ship. They used to discuss, play soccer, cut each other's hair, and spend time cooking, just waiting for the day when the ice would break and give them a way to move forward or back. The crew's days passed inside Endurance, and everyone grew closer to each other, to the extent that there was even an emotional attachment with the animals. Everyone hoped that one day they would reach near a civilization. But maybe nature had something else in mind. In April 1915, the ice began to break, but due to increasing pressure, the layers of ice started climbing on top of each other, and this was an extremely unexpected event. Millions of tons of compressed ice began to put pressure on Endurance. At this point, the most important thing was to free the ship from the pressure of the ice, so everyone worked together to remove the ice. After a few weeks of hard work, this problem was solved, but the danger was still there. On the night of July 14th, 1915, a loud noise suddenly came from under the ship, and Endurance tilted to one side. No one knew what had happened. Was it a collision with a whale or something else? The night passed, but what they saw in the morning was unbelievable. The compressed layers of ice had not only pushed the ship to one side, but now its rudder, with which the ship is steered, was completely broken. Endurance's crew had been stuck here for 7 months now, and they were at least 2,000 kilometers away from any human population. They had no hope of contacting anyone or calling for help, if they had any hope left. It was Sir Ernest Shackleton on October 18, 1915. The dreams of the Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition were completely shattered. The crew of the mission had been stuck in one place for 9 months. Then one night, a wave of pressure suddenly came, which plunged Endurance 30 degrees to one side in the blink of an eye. Now the risk of the ship leaking began to hover over their heads. In some places, water started to fill in through cracks. All the crew worked together all night, trying to stop the water from entering the ship. But the support above their heads was probably destined to end here. On October 27, 1915, Sir Ernest Shackleton gave the order to empty the ship because this was the only way to save their lives. The necessary equipment was taken out. Animals, food, lifeboats, beds, everything was removed. And now the whole crew was forced to come under the open sky on a sheet of snow. The support of the ship that had been with them for several months was now destroyed by the pressure of the ice in front of them, and slowly it began to sink into the water. Now everyone had only one question in mind. How long would they wait on the floating snow? Sir Ernest Shackleton decided that it was not safe to stay here. He knew of an island called Pollitt, about 550 kilometers away, where there used to be shelters and supplies, but only 3 lifeboats were not enough to get there. Because what could these lifeboats do against the ice that could crush such a massive ship? Therefore, the decision was made to walk toward this island. They started their journey toward Pollitt Island, which was the most dangerous part of their adventure. For the next 6 months, the crew faced deadly dangers. The ice sheet on which they camped would either crack or start floating with the flow of the sea. Fortunately, these ice sheets were slowly drifting toward Pollet Island, so Sir Ernest decided that they would reach Pollet Island by floating on the ice sheet. The crew now had no food or water, whatever they could find. On the floating ice sheet, like penguins or seals, they tried to hunt and survive. By February 1916, it had been 13 months since they had set out on this journey. Now their condition was such that they were surviving on just one biscuit at a time. After waiting another month, the situation got so bad that they were forced to kill their dogs to stay alive. Now arrangements for survival were made only for the next few days. They hoped that by reaching Pollet Island, they would get some supplies, but the floating island they were on changed its direction and started moving toward Elephant Island instead of Pollet Island. The temperature dropped to -20 degrees, and many crew members began to suffer from frostbite. Their mouths and tongues were so swollen that it became difficult to swallow. Anything soon, April 1916 arrived with the help of the broken ice sheet. They somehow managed to reach Elephant Island. For the first time in the last 16 months, they were touching land. They breathed a sigh of relief on Elephant Island, but this island was completely barren, and it was not possible to stay here for long, especially after the food supplies were over. There was only one hope left, and that was South Georgia Island, which was 1,300 kilometers away from there. Sir Ernest Shackleton decided that he would take this suicidal mission of going to South Georgia Island on a lifeboat. He chose a few people from the crew and left Elephant Island for South Georgia Island on April 24, 1916. This route is considered one of the most dangerous sea routes in the world. They had to face waves that were up to 90 feet high. The snowy cold was so severe that every part of the body began to freeze. Along with all these difficulties, they had to travel without GPS and without a compass, only with the help of stars and the sun. Despite putting in all their effort every day, they were unable to cover more than 80 kilometers after 16 days on May 10th. 1916, Sir Ernest Shackleton and 5 crew members finally managed to reach South Georgia Island. But there was one problem. They had reached the wrong side of South Georgia Island. In front of them were 4,000 feet high mountains. After climbing for the next 36 hours, they finally reached the other side, where the whaling station was. Shackleton's condition was so bad that the people at the whaling station could not even recognize him. No one believed that Sir Ernest, who had left about 1.5 years ago, had reached here in this condition after staying in South Georgia for 3 days. Sir Ernest left for Elephant Island, where he had left 22 people in terrible condition. He made many unsuccessful attempts to reach Elephant Island. Finally, on August 30th, 1916, he saw smoke rising from a distance on Elephant Island, which had been lit as a signal. Sir Ernest did not know how many of his people had survived, but when he came close, he found all the crew members of Elephant Island alive and well. On August 8th, 1914, he had left England for the first time, and after 2 years and 22 days, he brought his entire team back home safely. Of course, he never completed his real mission. He had made failed attempts to reach the South Pole twice before, and was stuck in the Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition just 120 kilometers before his destination. But his survival story gave him a place in history that he might never have achieved, even after completing the mission. After 107 years of this incident, Endurance was finally found in the Antarctic Ocean in 2022. Endurance is still preserved in perfect condition 3,000 meters below the ocean floor. Even the name written on it can still be read clearly, and with this, the story ends here. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next video.